is about the same size. Well, the light bulb, the way it was drawn in here, was actually larger than the light bulb actually is. So what this is 1/2 the size of the original light bulb. This is also smaller than 9 inches, so that ended up being a lot bigger. That's why the light bulb, in proportion to this, is the smallest object. So what the directions say is you can take one of the 3 objects. See, you're drawing 4. One of them we won't use, so we pick the best 3 out of the 4. So once we've picked the 3, and I picked the light bulb, the paper punch, and the spray bottle. So I enlarged the spray bottle 200%. That's why the drawing looks so much bigger. I used that once. The paper punch, I'd used that at its original size. Although when I drew it to fit it in here, it ended up being bigger than it originally is. That's all right. It's what is on here that counts. This is, whatever's on here is what is the original size of what you're using, not the original piece itself. The light bulb was reduced 50% because the light bulb was actually bigger than this paper punch, because I fit it in a diagonal. In other words, you could fit the light bulb. You don't have to hit opposite sides. You could actually have started the light bulb over here and drew it all the way around the corner, which is what I did. So now you can repeat one object as many times as you want. One of the 3. So I picked the light bulb. Now I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I ended up with here now is a couple things I wanted you to look at when you do the design in Part 2. And that is, I used closure here. You see how this piece touches 2 borders? It doesn't have to be opposite all the time, okay? You'll notice how I did closure here. I touched with this light bulb. Now look at these light bulbs, how I made different designs. You see how this one, when I touched all of them around the top, it made this kind of scallop shape in the middle. So I'm making other shapes with it. You see how I touched the 2 together here, and so then I made another kind of symmetrical thing that might be of interest at some point down the line, and then I used another one here which made closure down here. I also used cropping. You see how the bottom part of the bottle is cropped? I'll move this up a little bit. You see, because the bottle is down here. Also, this light bulb would go off the side. So you can do cropping. You can also flip them. In other words, if you did a drawing and the drawing looked like this, but you wanted to use it like this also, you could. And when you're tracing these, it's very easy to flip the image. You also can turn the images upside down any way you want. You want, the goal in this step of Part 2 is to fill up the 2-dimensional surface in an even way with some overlapping. Now, you use the overlap lines, okay? You'll notice in this piece how the overlap lines are then trapping these different values, so it ends up in a more interesting and less predictable design. So overlapping is a good thing, okay? Part 3. Part 3 is a spontaneous drawing. Now, you're going to do 3 of these in class, and we'll do them on an 18 by 24 newsprint. This, of course, is a scaled down newsprint, so it fits in my view of the camera. Now, generally, a spontaneous drawing will take about 2 minutes. So the idea here is to never lift your pencil off the paper. That's called a continuous line drawing. Also, you should touch all 4 borders and evenly distribute the line. In other words, as you watch me, I'll talk about that. The second thing is you don't want to draw any pictures. And you don't want to lift your pencil up. I don't care where you start, but you have to end on a border. You have to, well, I don't care where you start on the border, but you have to start on the border and you have to end on the border. So I'm kind of timing myself. I'm going to start right now. So I'm going to start up here. Now what I'm thinking about is, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go with the line? It's spontaneous. You know, it can be, I probably should tape this thing down. I'm going to have to try and hold it. See how I'm touching the border? I'm thinking about where I want to go next, but don't pick your pencil up. I want to get down to this border. And I'm going to go up. I want to get over in this corner because this corner is kind of empty. Now I'm going to want to go over in this corner. I got to kind of hang on to the paper here. And now I think I want to go over in this spot. This spot's kind of empty. And you know, the thing is about this is your, I guess what you think about should be just filling up the space. Spontaneous. Now, one other thing that you can think about is, well, what kind of, should I do any other kind of lines or any other kind of type of thing? So I said, well, what about if I do a repetition of objects like this? So I'm getting some more of a kind of curvilinear feeling of something. See, so I'm trying to duplicate something. So that took about a minute. One other thing, you know, you know, the spontaneous drawing in this case was all curvilinear lines. You could, or I could have added straight lines and mixed them up. One thing that happens when I do that, and I'll just continue this, I shouldn't, instead of lifting the pencil, if I make a straight line, you'll notice how there's more emphasis on that, and now I seem to make a relationship between these two lines all of a sudden. Another thing that happens is that if you were to take this, and I'm just, you know, you shouldn't pick up the pencil, but I'm just doing that to illustrate a point here while I was doing this. If I was to intersect lines like this, you see how I intersected all those lines? Now that's fine. I mean, what I'm doing is I'm just looking at something different that I could do. Now what happened here was I now end up with something that's possibly a focal point here, because I'm ending up with a lot more complexity in one area, if you look at this area here, as opposed to this area here. See? Hardly anything going on up there, some going on up here, a lot going on here. That can create a focal point. So what you do in part 3 is you're going to do 3 of these and you want to experiment with different types of lines and how you want to organize them. And then we select the best one. Now the final result here is that this piece here will be overlaid on this piece, which is part 4. Now we can't really show it on the camera here, but what you're doing on a light table or on a window with an outside light is you want to see how these intersections compete with these intersections. And you have the 4 options here. You could put this and trace it. What you're going to do is take these 2 pieces, put them like this, and then put another piece of paper over the top, and you'll be able to see everything all the way through, and then you will trace everything that you see. These borders will be the same, the paper's the same size. Now you have 4 ways of arranging this. This way, you can actually, since you have a light table, you can flip it over and you'll be able to see this backwards and also backwards and upside down. So there's 4 ways that you can combine these. So you see there's all this spontaneous relationships of objects. And what I would be looking for if I were you is, do you want all of this complexity on top of this? Or if I turn this over, I would have all of this complex stuff right over here. And maybe neither one of those ideas is the best, and you need to turn it upside down and flip it back over this way. So this is you're learning how to design things. You don't know the result. What you will do is simply come up with what you think is the best solution, and then at that point we discuss it. And I say, well, this looks good, what do you think? That's how this works. And then you learn from that, because at that point you still have another option to change the whole thing. We talked about this last time. No matter what the linear solution is, you can change the solution, if you remember from the last lecture, simply by where you draw the values. So you still have actually a 5th solution here, which is to shade it. And that's where you'll be using these different values with black and white, and as many values as you want to put into it in order to solve the 2-dimensional picture plane. So that's all I have for part 4 in this lecture. And so we'll be beginning part 1 once we complete the exercises in the book and do the creative drawing for lesson 5 on visual weight.